Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place where we share creative and inspiring learning in our schools. Season 2, Episode 10. Hello and welcome back to the Education on Fire podcast with me, Mark Taylor. Today I'm joined by Karen Hayton, who's part of the tech literacy team for British Telecom. Hi Karen, thank you for joining me. And can you just give us a bit of background about what tech literacy is within BT and what you're trying to achieve is part of that overall banner, first of all?
Yes, that's great. I'd love to. So tech literacy, BT realised that there's a real challenge at the moment in tech literacy, and we're living in an ever-increasing digital world. And at the moment, we've got sort of 12 million people that just don't have the digital skills that they're going to need to thrive in this world. So it's a really important subject for BT to look at tackling. I work within the tech literacy team, and I look after a programme called Enabling Teachers and Parents, and that's one stream under tech literacy. So we have a couple of work areas. One is inspiring kids into tech, another is work ready, and mine is about teachers and parents. So I'm looking at inspiring and engaging teachers and then next parents into how tech literacy is shaping the modern world and why it's important.
I really like the collaboration between the teachers and the parents. How does that work, or what's the aim of how that connection goes together?
Yeah, so that was kind of the umbrella, and at the moment, the first year I've really been tackling the work with teachers. So next year I'll be looking at actually how do we take those messages and the resources that we've created for teachers to also help parents, so that when the children go home, they're getting a consistent message, and that teachers have things that they can also support children with. What we were seeing was children are great at consuming tech, so they're swiping everything and their selfies all over the place, but actually they're not really creative and inquisitive into how does this work. So our programme is about really trying to inspire them to look at how things are created and start to be part of that culture that changes. So the programme that I'm in very much started with the young children at primary school, and I'll be looking at parents now. We're kind of embedded in that world.
And I guess it's the hard thing about it is that you're trying to implement something or support something which isn't quite developed yet, because when we're talking about primary school children, I guess the sorts of skills that they would know now if they were going into the workforce is different than what they'll be when they're actually getting to the workforce. So how does that work? Is it more of a skills-based thing rather than an actual literal coding kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked with, so when the curriculum changed back in 2014 and put computing science on the curriculum for the first time in England, we worked very much with the British Computing Society and the Department for Education to look at what support teachers would need and for that age range of children. So the resources that were created, which were created by teachers for teachers, so we didn't go around writing resources ourselves, we used the experts that were also recognised by teachers already. They created resources that actually are about computational thinking. So the skills that the primary school age children, the behaviours and skills that they should have now that will help them then build. So the very first building block is the thinking skills, which actually a lot of teachers were doing already in the classroom. They just didn't realise how it linked to the curriculum and how to really inspire the children in a subject that was quite scary for teachers who'd never done it before.
That's often the case, isn't it? It's just joining the dots and making everyone really sure about what's going on, and often it's part of what's going on in schools anyway. And just to give a little bit of background into how this all came about, as part of my work with NAPE, the National Association for Primary Education, I was very kindly invited to the BT Tower. I think it's probably there 3 occasions now, as part of the tech literacy umbrella, in terms of just finding ways about how tech literacy was going to be going into schools, and there was people from education there's people from tech there's people from business there were ministers there last time.
Right,
and just everybody who has an interest and an input, I guess, into tech and literacy together in terms of how our future is going to progress, all really active in our roundtable discussions, and lots of great things came out of that. And it was through there, which was really important, that I then heard about the Barefoot project, which is kind of where this is heading, and an integral part of it all. So can you tell us what the Barefoot project is and how that fits within tech literacy and your remit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you came to this Tower events, because what we were trying to do was not take something and run with it ourselves, and it's very much a collaboration with organisations and the teaching experts. So as I said, the curriculum changed in England, so first thing we did was work with teachers, and Barefoot Computing Project is about free resources that are on an open licence, so teachers can go and they can use the download resources, use them in their classroom straight away. To support them in there's lesson plans, and all the big scary words that were in the new curriculum, such as algorithms, were in the resources. So we actually brought them out in lesson plans and exercises. Teachers can pick them up and use them. There's plenty of self-teach notes, etc. Or we actually deliver workshops. So we actually take a volunteer, train a volunteer up, and they will go into a school and actually bring to life all the resources and demonstrate them for the teachers.
Great. And how many of these volunteers do you have? Is it something that anyone in the country or here in the UK can access, or is it location based? Or
yeah, no, absolutely. So when I joined the programme, it was very much in England, and my first thing to do was really make this a national programme. So I worked to align all the resources to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland curriculars as well. And also part of that was translating for the various different nations. To then support the workshops, it was building an army of volunteers throughout the UK, so that now anywhere within the UK that a teacher asks for a workshop, we would like to be able to fulfil it. So we have at the moment approximately 1,600 volunteers, of which there's always about 2/3 that are up and trained. So we've always got a pot coming through. Probably 3/4 are from BT, but another quarter come from other organisations. So where we see a large influx of schools that we perhaps don't have a network, we'll go to other organisations, and very much collaborating with the CAS network, master teachers, STEM ambassadors. So we've got volunteers coming from all walks, and they're not technically background either. You don't need, as long as you can present and work with teachers in a friendly environment, then we can train them in actually the resources.
Okay, and so the workshops themselves, is it an hour, is it a day, is it a succession of workshops? How does the programme work?
Yeah, so at the moment the workshop is just sort of an hour and a half workshop that we usually do after school, so 3:30 onwards, or sometimes we'll get schools together and we'll do a bigger event in an area. Usually it's after school, or it can be on an inset day when the schools plan best for them. So we try and work best with however the school wants it to run, and we'll bring the nearest volunteer that's trained up, or a couple of volunteers if they want to buddy into the school.
So when they've sort of had their sort of hour and a half and their training, do the teachers then feel sort of secure enough to then take that on, because there's obviously sort of left to swim on their own? You said there's some downloadable material and that kind of thing as well. So what are some of the key things that they'll take away that will support them in terms of carrying that through into the curriculum?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm really looking at the moment. So we kind of started and launched and created resources for all the nations, and now I'm actually starting to look at what's that journey for the teacher, because we have been going into the schools, and we'll talk about how many we've done shortly, but we've been going into the schools, and very much now it's about, so what's next for those teachers? So we'll be working with other organisations, and I've been starting to have conversations with Raspberry Pi, who also have resources and support, and we're looking at how now to join forces together so that the teachers have more of a journey and they know where to go and what good will look like further down the line, because like you say, it's ever changing at the moment, so we want to keep pace with that and make sure that the resources are the go-to resources for teachers throughout that journey.
Yeah, I think that's a really key important thing, is the fact that teachers being, obviously, if it's part of the curriculum they're not necessarily so familiar with, and there's the fear factor sets in, and I have that from the musical side. When I go in and deliver music related things, if they're not musical, then you can just see the fear in their faces. But when you break it down and they have a real understanding of just the nuts and bolts, the stage by stage way of developing and delivering something, it makes all the difference.
It does. I mean, I actually did a workshop myself, so this was totally new to me when I came in, and I can probably find a number of technical people far more technical than me. So for me to go into my own local primary school where my children had gone many years ago, was just great, because actually as I started to bring to life the exercise on algorithms, for instance, I also realised actually it's just a recipe, it's a set of instructions, it's a dance choreography, all of those things are algorithms. And once you start to explain that to teachers, you could see that light bulb moment with them as well, thinking, actually, this is all right, I'm doing this. I could be doing this in a geography lesson, I could be doing it in something else. So it wasn't, you've got to teach computing. It was actually, you're already doing this stuff, you need to just bring it to life in your lessons. And that was easy for me to do, because actually it was all new to me as well. So it was great to see that moment with a teacher.
Yeah, and that sort of that whole cross-curricular feeling of how it goes completely across the board, like you say, with sort of from dance to geography or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And so does it specifically also help the actual computing part of the curriculum in terms of actual coding and that sort of thing as well? Does it support that area as well?
So this program is really laying the foundations. We've done some research with Ipsos Mori, who are an external evaluation company, and they came in and they spoke to 400 or so teachers, some who'd had Barefoot, some who hadn't. So we had a really great insight from them into what teachers want. And the absolute feedback that we've had is this computational thinking skills that we're embedding at this early age is actually helping both with maths and English and all the other areas of the curriculum. And it then builds them onto that next level, which is, like you say, once you've gone through this, we start to introduce later on in Barefoot things like Scratch and Kodu and other starting programs, which actually starts to bring them into the world of coding and programming. And then hopefully they end up with code clubs and all the rest of it in the schools. So Barefoot I see as very much the start of the journey, and we start really with the young children at the beginning.
And what I liked about what you said just before was working with Raspberry Pi and other organisations like that is the fact that it just gives you a sense of within this framework you feel supported. There are names that you know, there are names that you trust, and like I say, the bigger the community, then the more supported I think the teachers as a whole feel then, because they feel they've got access to it, and that's sort of one point of reference. And I guess Barefoot website is probably the first point of reference that they'll go in and have a look at that. So what's the full website of Barefoot, just so if they want to go and check online and actually
the web
see
address.
What it is, the web address.
Yeah, so the web address at the moment is www.barefootcas.org.uk. That was the original website that was created for the resources, and we're actually working on the feedback that we've got, and we're going to deliver a brand new website. So we've actually got web designers creating from the feedback from teachers, volunteers, and the leading experts. We're actually looking at the website to bring that one even further, which will make it easier for teachers. But at the moment they can easily go into that website. There's 3 buttons there where you either register as a teacher, download resources, or request a workshop. And also for volunteers, they go to the same website, and if they want to volunteer, they simply register their details and we'll pick them up from there.
And the people that do volunteer, how much work do they do as part of their volunteering? Can it just be the odd workshop here and there, or do they do it on a much more sort of full-time basis?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing for us at BT as an organisation. Obviously, we've got resource the length and breadth of the country, but also across all spectrums, really. And some have time and some have very limited time. The idea of Barefoot, because it's only an hour and a half workshop, and usually it's after school, it's quite flexible that actually we're not asking volunteers to do something week in, week out, and forever. Actually, you know, if they do 3 workshops this year, that actually has a massive impact on the number of children reached. So it's minimal effort in terms of once they've got trained, obviously, to go and deliver it. But actually for a volunteer, then we find they benefit because they're building their skills, presentation skills. They could be on a development journey, and this absolutely ticks a lot of buttons. But also they're helping their own local community, and it could be the school that their children go to, or their sisters' children go to. So actually everybody has a direct impact as the results of this one.
Yeah, that sounds really good, and I think that direct impact, I think, is a really good thing. I mean, I've been into my kids' school and do music, and whatever your skills are that you can actually go and do, and then you feel like you're really able to give what's important to you, and some of the things that you can really help out there. So when volunteer's gone in and they've given this workshop, if they've done it with one particular teacher, is it easy then for that teacher to sort of pass that on to the rest of the school, or does it need to be more of a sort of a whole school collaboration at the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, when I did my local school, because I live in a village area, we actually had 4 schools came together. So there was representatives from 3 other schools, and the school that I was in, most of the teachers actually came in. So they stayed after school and they did it. The other schools, then it was probably somebody who was more into what was ICT originally, and they went back to then share the resources out with their schools. If they come back and want a workshop, that's absolutely fine. But usually, as long as we've demonstrated where they are, how they find them, how they use them, then most of them are quite okay to look. But the one thing, talking to Raspberry Pi actually, even earlier today, was looking at actually what we can do online. So we will look to develop the resources so there's more video, so teachers can be more self-sufficient at when they want to upskill themselves on these things.
And what I really like about that is that almost sort of completes the circle of the way lots of kids are learning themselves now, isn't it? My kids spend most of their life on YouTube learning the next things that they actually want to do, and it's interesting the way the teachers are doing the same thing, and just the resources just being in a place where you can do that and very step by step, very easily start to learn. And especially if you've had a workshop already, just having that sort of, oh yeah, I remember that, not quite sure, but I can then just go and check it out and see how it goes.
And I think teachers as well, from what I'm learning, and I'm not a teacher, but for teachers, they like the idea of a CPD journey as well. So if they can prove that they're sharing with other teachers, and this is an ideal thing to do that, then it's really helping their development as well, isn't it, as a teacher? Absolutely,
and fits in with the current structure of the way schools work, but also in that expanding new world of technology and the sort of the foray that's sort of going in with that. So you talked a little bit about the fact that it's sort of national and you can go the length and breadth now. So can you give us some idea of how many schools have been involved in the sorts of numbers of children that have had access to this now?
Yes, I mean, when I first took this on, I actually thought it was quite as easy as sort of taking these fantastic resources that everybody in England liked, that had seen them so far, obviously make that available to more people, because it was about getting the word out there. But then my first visit to Scotland, I suddenly realised actually it's not as simple as just taking these resources to Scotland. They had to be completely aligned. The way of doing that and working with the individual governments, for the example of Northern Ireland, and I'm coming to your point about numbers, but just before Christmas we had a minister go into the school in Northern Ireland, in Belfast it was, and really launched Barefoot in Northern Ireland, and as a result of that he wrote out to the teachers to say these are fantastic. So in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland there was this full endorsement at the beginning, which meant within 2 weeks of launching in Northern Ireland in December we had 100 workshop requests from schools. So I have this huge demand suddenly come from these launches. I mean, to date we've actually reached 980,000 primary school children, and that's over 33,000 teachers. So that's really in a 2-year programme. So that's a phenomenal amount of workshops and volunteers out on the ground to get there. And I have a pipeline of around 300 workshops waiting that's with volunteers to go and deliver in the next few months. So and we've got lots of opportunity to do more.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I guess then the more volunteers you have and the more widespread it becomes.
Yeah.
And
I think just finishing on that, the strongest way of selling this programme is for teachers to experience it and then talk to other teachers. You know, it doesn't work if someone from BT rings a school up and says, hey, I've got some free resources for you. But if a teacher or a head teacher or a parent governor says to a school, these are great resources, then that's where the word really spreads quickly.
Yeah, and I guess that big growth you've had in those couple of years just gets bigger and bigger, because like I say, the more teachers are then involved, and then it's just by doing the same, is that like the snowball effect, isn't it? It just gets bigger exponentially as you go through.
You know, the more we know teachers are downloading and using the resources, the more we can put resource in to building this programme and growing further. So it's kind of feeding the appetite, really. We want to grow the numbers more to invest further in further resources as well. And in terms of that growing, you've talked about the Raspberry Pi and the online videos and that sort of thing. Is there any other aspects that the development's heading in? Yeah, for me at the moment, we're re-looking at the workshop again. So we're constantly revisiting things to make sure that it's interactive and it's fun and engaging for both volunteers and teachers to be part of. So that will continue to evolve. The website, as I say, we're going to launch a brand new website. We'll do a formal launch in Wales, and then I'm also looking at other areas. So the Republic of Ireland's knocking on the door, having seen what's happened in Northern Ireland. So there's demand coming from other areas, which again involves looking at the resources. I'm very much looking at gaps in resources, so it might be early years. For instance, we've launched some SEN, special education needs resources this year, so they've gone down really well. So I'm constantly looking at actually what else is needed, and that's where I'll work with TES, Raspberry Pi and other organisations to make sure that if we do develop something new, it's the best. But actually, if there's a great resource already out there, how do we bring it into the Barefoot banner and kind of get it Barefoot endorsed, because our resources are endorsed by the governments now. So teachers really then will trust this is a great source for resources, and that's kind of where I'm looking. And then obviously my next eye is on the parents, because I really want to make sure that joins up then when they go home, they get support. And that could be as simple as teachers give homework that parents can do with kids that are actually Barefoot type related resources. Music's a perfect example. I thought about algorithms, something to do with music can demonstrate an algorithm. So something that's more fun for teachers and parents to do together and work at home.
Yeah, and I think that's something that most parents would welcome as a kind of a change to the sort of the normal exactly the
10
normal
times
background.
table.
Absolutely. It sounds really great, and I'm so glad that it's progressing as fast as it is. And you mentioned there about the government side of things, and it was originally a government initiative, wasn't it? So how did BT initially get involved in that?
Yeah, so it all started, as I say, back in 2014 when the government was changing the curriculum in England, and really the research was saying that the teachers just didn't have the confidence to go and deliver this new curriculum. So the British Computing Society with the DFE and BT at that time and a few other organisations came together to address that need there. BT picked up the baton in 2015 to completely take over the programme, delivering it both on a funding perspective but also a programme management, which is obviously part of my role. So we then took over the baton to continue the programme, and because it's been so well received, I've got the support to continue further, and we're about to reach our first 1 millionth child. BT has an ambition to support 5 million children by the year 2020. Enabling teachers, and the Barefoot is a key enabler in that programme at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess it's going to be a real plus for BT to have essentially their future employees maybe they're supporting and training really early on, so that when you get through into the workforce, they're already thinking in a way that's going to be part of the ethos of the way that BT I assume are wanting to work and develop.
This is it. And I think, for BT, when we talk about the workforce of the future, absolutely, if we don't do something, we'll have a problem. We're starting with the very first generation, but our programmes go right the way through. So we bring in tech literacy into our Work Ready programmes, so that whatever age the children are coming to us at the moment, we are approaching it from a workforce of the future to cover that one. So, yes.
Great. And it's a completely free resource. The workshops are free as well. There's no extra cost involved.
As I say, any organisation is involved. We'll have volunteers from anywhere, as long as they meet the criteria in terms of being able to deliver and present to a school. It's totally free. Teachers can use what they like. They can dip in and out of it. They love the lesson plans because it's all prepared for them. And there is no selling of anything on the back of it. So this isn't a commercial. It's purely a corporate social event, really, that is actually building the culture change, which is what we really need to do.
And I guess once the teachers had the experience of the workshops and been trained in terms of supporting their children in their school, they're then in the perfect opportunity to give back and actually be able to support other schools as well, because they could then volunteer to be a volunteer, as it were, and develop in the community even more than that.
Yes, and I think, the parents that do start to embrace this, I mean, it'll be just so great for the children to have that sort of role modelling, but also they can perhaps support code clubs and other things that, like you say, it takes it out of just the first stage and it gives a whole journey for both the children, the parents and the teachers then.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, there'll be links and pictures of the posters and everything all on the website. If you go to educationonfire.com, we'll have links and everything linked up to there. And as things develop as well, we'll try and keep that updated so that we've always got the latest version of things to be able to kick through. And as we said, it's barefoot.cas.org.
We actually have a flyer as well, which is one of the links that you put on, and that's a flyer that anybody could take into a local primary school. So even if you don't want to deliver a workshop, you could take the flyer in so that school could pick up the free resources or the free workshop. And you can find the Barefoot. Here we go. www.barefootcas.org.uk.
Barefootcas.org.uk. So that's your first point of call. And one last thing I'd just like to focus on just before we finish. You mentioned that as well as going into schools directly, you've also been into teacher training places as well. So does that work in the same sort of way? It's just that before they've even qualified and get into the school, they're already up and running, really?
Yeah, so what we've been trying to do is build relationships with the universities that are training the teachers of the future and actually start to bring this into their training. So wherever possible, we've been bringing these resources into their training modules of the teaching of computer science within teaching. So we've also got, it's working two ways really. The teachers are being trained in the subject, but also some of them are going on to then be volunteers and actually build up their experience by going out into the schools. So that's working really well for the graduates of the future as well. And we've got really strong relationships with quite a number of the key universities now.
That sounds fantastic. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's been really great. I'm actually here in BT Centre, and having been to the tower, it's very nice to come to the actual home of BT as well, which has been brilliant. And it's such a great project, and I'm so glad that it's actually expanding in such a way that it's going to reach so many children. And I think that support and what I really love is the whole community feel of the corporate side and the education side, and everyone working together to really help children of the future and put it together in a way which is supportive, not just under the computing umbrella, but across the curriculum as well, because that's key. It's just going to be part of the fundamentals of what education is for everything that they do. So it's really important to have that. And
like you say, to have it as important as reading as writing, which it is, and these skills that they get from computational thinking absolutely help with their maths, which we can see it in the survey that we've actually had done. So yeah,
that's brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much for talking to me.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information, please go to educationonfire.com.